Good day, everyone. Welcome to this session on 5G and Internet of Things. It's part of the 2021 Digital Africa Conference and Exhibition on building a new Africa with AI and blockchain. As we start, I would like to invite my panelists to please do a quick introduction, and then we look at 5G and how it impacts the new Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Basu. My name is Chidi Adjusle. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Backbone Connectivity Network.
Okay, my name is Engineer Bako Wakil. I'm the Director of Technical Standards and Network Integrity at the NCC, standing in for Professor Umar Garba Dambata, the Executive Vice Chairman and CEO of NCC. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Engineer Salisu Kaka, Acting Director, Digital Economic Development Department of NIDA. I'm standing in for the DG of NIDA, Malam Kashifoino Abdullahi, who is unavoidably absent for the sessions, so I tender his apology. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nahal Jamakani. I'm the Managing Director at Winky Facility Management Services. We're a facility management service provider based in Lagos, and we're happy to be on this session today, making Internet of Things applications.
Okay, sir. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming for joining this session. I'd like to welcome you again and our viewers. To get us started, earlier today, the Executive Chairman, I beg your pardon, EVC, Executive Vice Chairman of the SEC, made a stunning disclosure. He told us at Digital Africa that the Nigerian government concluded a pilot of the 5G amidst a lot of reaction by the public around the safety. Subsequently, the government submitted the result, the report of the pilot rollout through the Ministry of Digital Communication and Digital Economy to the President. And it did confirm that the National Assembly has set up a joint committee which has approved the outcome of this report, which says in simple terms that 5G is not dangerous to health. Gentlemen, we know that 5G is one of the key pivotal technology to drive the fourth industrial revolution and take Africa to the new age. So to get us started, it would be nice to get some insight from the representative of the EVC. Share with us some insight from what happened at the commission. How did this test go? What was the engagement process like? And now that the National Assembly have said, you know what, it's not dangerous to our health, and we're waiting for the president to say, go ahead, what should we expect to happen in the coming days or more?
Okay, thank you very much for that. As the EVC has said it, we started this process with a proof of concept with one of the operators. It was ensure that the 5G deployment will come in with benefits, and that some of the doubts people are having around the 5G, is also addressed. And that proof of concept, we've given a report to the government, and from our findings, there was no cause for alarm as to the effect of 5G on human life, because technically speaking, 5G radiation is even far less than the current 3G, 4G radiation, because of some of the new advances that we have in terms of having not only active antenna, but also intelligent massive MIMO antennas that we have. There are also technologies or techniques that we call beam forming and beam steering, where the radiation from 5G is like a pencil beam targeted at the target, rather than a all-round radiation as we find in 3G and 4G. So because of that, the cumulative radiation within a 5G environment is far less and much better than 3G and 4G. So the government has, and the National Assembly has actually approved, that and agreed that there is no harm, and therefore we can go into, go ahead with the deployment of 5G. So the next step we did was to identify the spectrum that needed to be deployed. As I said, 5G is now being considered in two different fashion, stand-alone and non-stand-alone deployment fashion. And in Nigeria, we are going to go in the route of the non-stand-alone, where the 5G deployment will coexist and run on the current 4G, infrastructure, at least for the signaling. And with that, we have identified one of the, key, and very important spectrum in the mid-band, which is the C-band 3.5 gigahertz band. And in Nigeria, part of that is being occupied by the niche ComSat, which we had an agreement, MOU, with the niche ComSat to, move them further away, to the end of the, 3G, 3.5 gig, for us to have a sufficient, spectrum in terms of quantum, for auctioning. And that the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy has approved that memorandum of understanding for to be executed between the NCC and niche ComSat, and that has been done. And right now we have a committee under the chairmanship of the Executive Commissioner State Technical Services to come up with the information memorandum towards auctioning of that 3.5 gigahertz band. And that committee has concluded its assignment, which is ready to submit to the management and to the board, and eventually to the minister, and once that is concluded.
I'd like to interject you at this point. Thank you so much. It is obvious and apparent that the NCC is doing a lot of work in this regard. In fact, not only is the NCC doing a lot of work, the EVC also challenged other regulatory agencies in Africa to step up on the 5G regulatory framework implementation. So I'm sure if we allow you to continue to tell us how far gone you are, we would spend the entire session on the amount of work you're doing. So I would like to invite Edwin Madu, who will be co-moderating this session with me, to please come on board and also address the panelists. Edwin, please.
Hello.
Edwin.
We were just at the back, but see, we don't have yet the moment. The connection is not the best, but until you hear me.
A little bit of glitters, but I can hear you.
Not too clear.
All right.
Okay,
so I think the first direction.
Yeah, Edwin, so we would come back to you in a bit. We'll come back to you, Edwin. Let's see if we get some improvement on your network there. Now, we've heard the narrative of what's going on in Nigeria around the 5G. Ready to roll out, regulatory hurdles being crossed, legislative engagement, National Assembly okays it. Now we're waiting for presidency. Already a committee has been set up, and I am sure the private sector players are ready. Apps, equipment, and the rest of it will continue in the play down the line. Now, I would like to ask, there is so much ado about this 5G. Yes, we know mobile is the future, the present, mobility is everything. What exactly does 5G mean to Africa, the new Africa, especially from a perspective of AI and blockchain? I know every panelist will have a word or two on this. So I would like to start by inviting Nahel to please tell us. So 5G, what exactly does it offer Africa? There's so much hype about this technology. Is that what we need?
Yeah, thank you, Uzo, for the question. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. Our experience with 5G and network is primarily focused on the built environment and most especially the power sector. When people think 5G, the first thought that comes to most people is the cell phone, right? Because that's the mobile application that is most commonly used by the majority of the population. But 5G technology is so much more, and there's applications in healthcare, in power sector, in the construction sector that are not often talked about. And what I was saying earlier during the backstage conversation is that there's applications for 5G. There's applications for the Internet of Things that does not actually require the 5G technology. I mean, IOT is not waiting for 5G to be deployed in order to be used on a mass scale. Let's take the power sector, for example. Currently, there's a major issue in terms of metering for the discos. You know, many of the customers that are supplied power to their buildings, there isn't so much transparency in terms of how much are they being billed for their power. Right? So with the deployment of 5G, the aspect of smart metering now opens up, right? And with smart metering, you're able to have the discos build more trust with their customers. And by having more trust, more transparency, people are more likely to engage in a positive way with their discos, which drives up the revenue generation, right? So this is just one of many, many applications. Smart metering can be a very powerful tool to improve the power sector in the country. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing some light around the application of 5G there. I would like to ask the next question around cost. Definitely, from what we hear, 5G technology for most operators and people who invest in providing telecom services is going to cost quite some penny to roll out. There are all sorts of speculations and projections around the quantum of billions of dollars that will be required in investment to make this happen. So the question is Africa really, truly ready for this? And for a private sector player, my colleague here, the Chief Commercial Officer of BCN, you roll out networks, you support networks, you provide network services, supporting telcos and making this happen. Do you think that the amount of investment that we would need to roll out 5G, are we ready for this? Does it excite you that it's opening up a new set of opportunities? Is Africa ready to make this investment and roll out this network? Should we get the nod from regulators?
Okay, thank you, Bayo. I think first, what's 5G in the real sense of it? 5G is just a natural evolution of the existing platforms, the existing technology platforms. You know, the whole 3G, 4G. I mean, it's a clear evolution path. What does 5G promise today? There are three main indicators, performance indicators, they actually define, and the OEM partners will define. They talk about enhanced mobile broadband, which essentially moves the capacity of connections, you know, moves the bandwidth available. Of course, subject to, like the NCC director said, subject to the spectrum available. Then, of course, we did talk about the massive machine-to-machine communication, the IOTs, the narrowband IOTs that Nahim just talked around as well. And of course, there is the ultra-reliable, low-latency communication. That promise of low latency. So, in the recent, 5G is just a telecom evolution path. It's a natural path that operators will naturally evolve into. The issue is not will they do it, is when will they do it. Of course, once the market conditions are ripe, it will happen. It promises 10 times more capacity, which is the present attraction especially for the consumer space. The present attraction is a faster platform for me. It costs network latency by, depends on who is talking, 100 to 200%, depending on if it's the operator or the vendor or a strategy. So the biggest attraction, of course, is this massive connection and this mass market ability you get. So our operators in Africa ready, they have to, the service provider case is always, will have to focus on monetization. Is it going to make money out of this? So for the consumer, what he's looking for is, it's better service, better quality of service. 5G promises low latency. So in terms of availability and access, that's an option. 5G is the way to go. On the enterprise use case, most enterprise use cases today, that is where the disruption is happening. And like Nahed talked about, that is where IoT itself. One of the definitions of 5G is on the NB-IoT, the narrowband IoT. That's where disruptions will happen. That's where applications will develop. That's where IoT will leverage on B2B cases, especially for the telco, especially once the telcos are able to seed connectivity across a wider band. Today, the test that happened in Nigeria, for instance, the 3 months test that MTN did, one of the things that they need to now have to wait for is spectrum. Once spectrum availability happens, then, of course, you can now start making investment. But let's also look at Africa. In Nigeria, for instance, 2G connectivity is still less than 100%. We have about 80% 2G connectivity. 3G is projected for around 45%. 4G spread is only to about 50 million of the population. So we think in the next few years, we'll still have the operators will still want to push their investments in 3G and 4G. In fact, the National Broadband Plan did have a mention of 3G and 4G in terms of moving to a 90%, 95% coverage on 25 meg by 2025. So there has to be a business case around monetizing 5G for operators to actually start making investments in that space. Especially because for operators, they want to avoid the so-called 4G scenario where they invested a lot of money and then OTT players came on the space and they were riding on that infrastructure to make money while they were not able to reap all those benefits. Yes, will 5G happen? Absolutely, it will. When will it happen? It will be determined by the business case around it. When will the spectrum be available? Can the regulators be able to give out 100 megahertz of spectrum, for instance, 80 to 100 megahertz of spectrum, for instance, which operators will require, especially in the mid-band, for instance, to be able to deploy? The NCC talked about, the good thing is in Nigeria, for instance, the NCC is already refarming some of the spectrum. From NISCOM side, already have some of the fixed wireless access spectrum is being refarmed, especially the 3.5 gig, which is the sweet spot. So operators will look at availability of spectrum, will look at how the market is maturing, will look at the ecosystem itself, especially of devices. The cost of devices is a big issue. So you do not just deploy 5G networks when the device side is also evolving. So that entire value chain is a consideration the operators will have. So let's say in the next 4 or 5 years, we could start having more deployments of 5G besides the Vodacom and MTN deployments in South Africa. Of course, there are trials already in Nigeria, in Gabon, in Uganda. So we think in the next few years, maybe in a year or two, at least let's first of all monetize the existing infrastructure, especially 3G and 4G investments. But 5G investments will happen, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Chidi. That's a strong affirmation of the future of 5G and the opportunities it is most likely to bring to investors, players, users, and of course the regulators. Now, but there is a perspective which you've also highlighted. Nahel mentioned it, you highlighted it. I think I'd like to go back to it. And that's around the IoT, the narrow spectrum and the focus on IoT. And I'd like to take it a bit more from the perspective of regulation. Like most new technologies, exponential technologies, regulation and how to get them off the ground is often because of concern in almost every jurisdiction. And I'm sure here in Nigeria, as we move into the IoT side of the debate, yes, NCC would clearly regulate the spectrum itself and the operators, but on IoT and solutions and deployment and use cases, a lot of those things might fall on the plate of someone like NIDA. So I'm wondering, the representative of the DG of NIDA, I am sure you're already part of the conversation. NCC already gave us an indication of how they've had to, working with the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, interface with NICOMSERT. I'm sure there are a lot of interfaces coming from your end. What is the playbook of NITDA around 5G and IoT? What exactly, we know you have a couple of policy documents. What exactly should we be expecting?
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. As you rightly said, NIDA is a critical player within the ministry that tries to actualize or implement the overarching national or Nigerian digital economy policy and strategy. In that policy, there is clear recognitions of the need to develop a digital Nigeria by exploiting the emerging technologies. IoT, 5G, and all others are some of these technologies that actually drives and push the world globally toward the post-industrial revolution. And really, the country has recognized this in the NDEPS policy and some of the strategies that were developed by other agencies. For instance, NIDA, in our own strategic roadmap and action plans, we clearly also underscore the need to explore and make use or better use of these emerging technologies. So there's deliberate attempts to set off mechanisms and processes that can actually coordinate the activities of these emerging technologies, or what will lead to engagement of the society, especially the youth, the innovators, and the entrepreneurs, because they are the ones who will make use of these enormous data that is generated through the use of IoT, the 5G technologies, big data analytics, and the rest. So there is two special purpose vehicles established to ensure that the environment is set and enabled that can allow exploration of these technologies. We have the National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, and we have the Office of Nigerian Digital Innovations. These SPBs, they were purposely put in place to ensure that the downstreams of the activities that takes place as a result of this emerging technology usage is put into better use. So the regulations, it comes in sort of a developmental way, because innovations comes along with disruptions, right? So as you allow the systems or the process to be disrupted for innovations to emerge, and we bring our entrepreneurs, there should be a mild way of regulating these activities. So we back up these SPBs with a process of coming with a national digital innovation and entrepreneurship policy that tries to bring the minimum requirements that is expected on utilization of these technologies through public and private investment. For instance, the NCARE, that is the National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, is expected to serve like a research center for excellence toward exploration of these emerging technologies. It will work along with the private hubs that are existing in various places like Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and several other places, so that youth can come and exploit these emerging technologies and come out with solutions that are new, or even bring an improvement to the existing solution that is in place, so that at least there's better improvement, there's effectiveness. And again, as 3D mentioned earlier, the 5G itself is not a network of its own. It's like a network of networks. So it opens up other spaces in cloud services, big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and the like. So a whole lot of opportunities will be opened by these IoTs and 5Gs. So the government's responsibility is to ensure that that policy provisions, those strategies are put in place with initiatives to open up opportunities. And some of the opportunities has to come in a form of like intervention, because the business sector is not always willing or ready to explore where they don't see potential business viability there. So government is putting those interventions. That's why we have the lack of that NCI and ONDI, so that piloting and use case can be piloted there to put in place and open the space to show the private sector that yes, there's opportunity in this area, come and invest. We have tried some of these IoT and 5G technologies in some of our smart initiatives. Like we have what we call National Adopted Village for Smart Agriculture. Is a way of bringing these emerging technologies, the IoTs and the 5Gs, into agricultural sector. We piloted this thing in 2019 and 2020, and it has given out a very good result with other nations. I mean, other states are ready to copy and adopt these strategies. We just launched another one under the education sector, National Adopted Schools for Smart Education. So we are trying to take these sectors one by one by piloting this smart initiative using these emerging technologies, the likes of IoT, blockchains, 5G, and the rest, so that the ecosystem is developed and allow private sector investment. And like that also, it will bring down the investment cost, because the infrastructure are put in place by the government only for private sector to come and explore at individual level, organization levels, and we expand the potentials, and we develop the country and grow the economy that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nida. That's insightful. It falls, of course, within our expectation of what NIDA has been doing in about 20 years or so. It's been a very important agency to Nigeria, and I'm sure a lot of your compatriots or colleagues in the rest of Africa are doing the same. What excites me more around 5G, and I'm sure excite people like my kids, is the value 5G brings to users. All right, they will be able to tweet more, play more, gaming, watch video more, and all of that. From a user perspective, should it just be all more fun, more play, more gaming, more unlimited data? Is that all there is to it? Or are there skills, expectations, and talents that kids need to bring on board to take advantage of this going forward? Who would like to take this? This is an open question. Chidi, Nahel, Nida, NCC.
Okay.
I wish my son was here. He would have jumped on the question, and I know what he would say. He would just quickly tell me, look, it's all gaming, video, and then he wants to drive cars and play all those games online. I mean, that's it. He's not interested in any other thing. But I'm sure there is more. I should go back home and tell him. Should I?
Yeah, I mean, Bayo, I think it's important to see the deluge of connections that will happen by deploying 5G. Once 5G and IoT deployments happen, I mean, like Nahel said, IoT deployments are already ongoing anyway, regardless of 5G. 5G is just a medium for connectivity for them. But there's a deluge that is about to happen, both from wearables to energy. You talked about smart metering to intelligent shopping. You're talking about NFC payments, supply chain management, to healthcare, remote surgeries, especially because of low latency platforms that 5G itself deliver. So there's a whole lot of skill set that are now required, which is now, like your son, who is a digital native, he will now need to start understanding how these technologies can be applied to specific industries and fields. I mean, doctors who were used to doing surgeries on the manual process, today many of them are now beginning to understand how to use robotics and devices to actually conduct surgery. So there has to be another level of skill sets required. In manufacturing, industrial IoT is also coming in. You're using 5G as a backhaul or transport medium now manage manufacturing and industry processes. So that's a total different skill set required. So there has to be an IT edge or telecoms or information technology edge to every skill required. That has to now become an additional edge. Connected cars, we're talking about public and private safety. We're talking about public safety, even for monitoring, street lighting. So there's a huge deluge of data. IoT itself and 5G will also drive back-end infrastructure investment. There are skills that are required. Nigeria's digital economy plan and strategy also includes skilling the population itself, trying to do training, digital literacy, and strategy. So there is a whole lot of skills required, right from the network side to the business side to deployment to even commercializing those aspects. And again, like Nahil said, there is now that issue of now trying to create value from high-speed networks. You can now do things a lot faster. So people have to now sit back and start developing applications and platforms and services that will now leverage on these faster infrastructure and service, which is the biggest promise of 5G. Faster deployment, more better connectivity, and then, of course, IoT devices, a deluge of IoT devices that now leverages on this. So skilling is a big component of the coming IoT and 5G innovation. Yes.
Yeah, and if I can just buttress that point, Chidi. So thank you for your contribution. Ultimately, it's not all fun and games, and with technology like 5G. We're at a point where, as a society, the development of skills, the development of these technological applications of Internet of Things, of smart monitoring, smart healthcare, if the Nigerian population and the private sector and public sector can actually join forces and start deploying these technologies and developing the skills on ground, then there's no reason why these skills can now be exported across Africa or eventually exported across the world, right? Because it's not like in the case of IoT and smart cities, smart healthcare, it's not like the world is years ahead in terms of development. We're almost at a level playing field at this point. So we're at the point where it's a bit of a unique and exciting opportunity that we can really solve some of the nation's most pressing problems. I mentioned power a lot because that's the area I'm most involved in, but there's also issues around healthcare, issues around logistics, around infrastructure. If we can leverage these kind of technologies, we really can leapfrog a number of countries around the world by innovating and eventually exporting this innovation and exporting these solutions turnkey, really. First to our African neighbors, and then second of all, globally, right? So that really is what so you talk about your children, that really is what 5G is all about. I mean, we can see a future where your child at 12 can build a robot which, can signal to an image to a doctor halfway across the world, That technology is available for him if he applies himself and does the right education, and later on can use his skills to export this technology to other countries, as I said. And Nigerians have proved to be very innovative, very smart, very intelligent. You look at the educational levels in the US. I think the Nigerians are the most educated expatriates living in the US. So there's a lot of innovation in the society, in the people. So this technology can actually help us leverage the human capital and accelerate Nigeria to be the global force that it's supposed to be.
Excellent. Thanks, Nahil, and thank you for the vote of confidence in my kid. I will see him do that, and hopefully in the next couple of Digital Africa, he will be demonstrating what he has done. So you see, and then you can come invest in his future. Talking of which,
Bayo. Hello.
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
I think to add what all my colleagues said, you see, the opportunity this emerging technology is bringing to the society is the ability of the so-called digital native to explore and becomes very innovative. And we had started already seeing this result in the likes of what is happening around our financial sector. I'm sure you're aware of the recent achievement by Flutter Waves, and so many other fintech societies where they innovate and come out with solutions that is exported, and they're attracting huge of foreign direct investments to the country. And I believe every other sectors, we have a couple of these innovations that are identified and developed that are solving some peculiar challenges, and which challenges can easily be reflected in other countries across the globe. So the opportunities is there, and it will continue to grow there. It's just a matter of giving access and exposing these keys to those technologies and a guided and regulated environment, and the better part of them will be identified and take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, there's one aspect again I would like to talk about around what has been going on in Nigeria and indeed most of Africa. Well, rest of the world actually. Technology is usually a couple of steps ahead of regulation. In fact, for most of the technology, sometimes they reach what seemed like a prime for a couple of years, 5, 10 years, before regulation begins to wake up and realize, hey, we need to do something about it. The most famous use case, of course, is social media and then e-commerce. Yeah, but the rest of technology, 5G and the opportunities it will bring, as you gentlemen have educated us, regulation in Nigeria and indeed Africa is this time around starting up early. A lot of policy documents, a lot of proposals at different national assemblies trying to create frameworks and licensing regimes around this. Is there a risk that more regulation will slow down the gains that 5G would give or bring to the society? And how should we balance in terms of how far should regulation go? I would like to hear first from those who are dishing out the regulations, both on the NCC and NITDA side of things, and then of course our private sector players. Gentlemen.
Okay. From the NCC point of view, you know, we don't regulate technology. We are actually technology neutral. However, services that are going to run, you know, on those are things that we look at, particularly from consumer perspective, from quality of service perspective, from the NCC that will come up with regulations and guidelines, you know, to ensure that people feel safe for using those services, and then also in terms of quality of service, that the right quality of service are being offered by the service provider. But in terms of technology, we don't really actually regulate technology. We are technology neutral, and as others have said, you know, 5G in itself, I don't see 5G as simply a technology, but 5G is a platform that so many other, you know, technologies and applications are going to ride on. And even from those that have been mentioned, we may probably see in the future so many others that are going to come up once these services are available, this platform is available. We'll have so much in agriculture, for instance. We could have thousands and thousands of sensors deployed there, measuring, you know, soil fertility, soil texture, and so on, to yield, you know, to increase agricultural yield, in security, in every aspect of life. Actually, 5G is there to facilitate and make better life. So, from regulatory perspective, we will only come up with regulations and guidelines on the services that are going to come up, but not on the technology itself. We are technology neutral. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Nida, please. You want to have
Yes. Yeah. You see, as everyone of us here rightly observed, the evolution the world is going as a result of use of these technologies. It comes along with the disruptions. And these disruptions, at times, is not a respecter of any existing regulation. It has to disrupt first before it innovates and come out with some solution. So it's a fact that globally, the world is ahead of the regulatory requirement, meaning that the government or the regulatory provisions is always making a catch-up game to ensure that it puts proper mechanism to safeguard utilization of these technologies. That's why in NIDA now we have refocused our process of making these policies and engagement from the conventional top-down approach. Government will sit down, put regulation, and throw to the society for deployment. Now the approach is more of bottom-top. We allow the disruption to take place, identify the solution, then engage the governments in public sector engagement to formalize these policies. At that, we are bringing in participation of the private sector, participation of the society toward developing of this regulatory prohibition. That's why we recoil it from just normal regulation to deploymental regulation, in the sense that it is a regulation that is brought in forward with working together or along with the private sectors, the larger community, to ensure that they contributed and put in everything that is needed to come into this policy and regulatory requirement, so that adoptions and monitoring and compliance will be made easy, because there is that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusiveness when we are developing these things. So like that, we believe we are going to support use of these technologies. We are going to promote innovations with this mild developmental regulation requirement. So the aspect is not about how fast we come, but how we come through. So we adopt this process of bottom-top. Of recent, if you observe, we normally send invitations for webinars to engage stakeholders toward developing these policies before we even pass it through our policy developmental cycles and issue it as a public government document for adoptions and use. And like that, we have achieved great cooperation with the private sector, because, yes, we are there for them, but they're also there for us. Without their buy-in, hardly government's responsibilities will be achieved, and it will affect the sector in general. Thank you.
Okay, Nahil and Chidi, more regulation, less regulation. What's the expectation? Chidi, please.
Okay, so I think Engineer Bako talked around this, hit it on the head. NCC is not regulating technology. They're actually trying to encourage outcomes, which is the ideal scenario that we should have. I think the challenge of whether it's IOT or AI or 5G itself is the security and privacy concerns. Talk about things like interoperability, and those are things where the regulators are trying to focus on the outcomes. How can we secure devices on the network? How can we secure the citizens as they use these technologies and platforms? So the regulatory interventions are mostly focused on encouraging use of the platforms and technology, and also making sure the operators themselves receive the right kind of interventions required. For most of the regulatory interventions, get us the right spectrum required. Type approved devices that will be connected on the network. Look at the security concerns. I think type approval is very critical, so that we're sure of the safety of devices themselves in terms of from the safety concern. And then interoperability, make sure devices are not running in silos or just working out on their own, and then we do not have that interworking relationship and compatibility. Then of course encourage the market. Look, the entire 5G and IoT roadmap is not a standalone. It does not stand on its own. There's a huge ecosystem supporting it. For instance, you cannot build a 5G network without having the back-end infrastructure, and in an environment, for instance, having the fiber backhaul required. So regulators will look at their end-to-end infrastructure space, that entire ecosystem, and see where each person plugs in, and not just focus on 5G and IoT. And by the way, 5G is just, again, I look at this as an access technology. It's just mostly will be focused on the last mile access. There could be, especially on the millimeter wave bands, there could be some backhaul, interventions, but most of it will be on that last mile access. That is where most of the interventions will happen on 5G. And so that's where it will compete with fiber. So fiber will be required in the back end. It's an entire ecosystem. Yes.
Thank you, Chidi. Thank you for that. We're rounding off now. I would like to start with Nahel. I wanted you to say something, so I'll give you a minute. I'll come back to you, gentlemen. 30 seconds, your final thoughts. But I'll give Nahel a minute because I asked a question earlier I wanted to address. But I'll change the question a little bit, and I would like you to also, in responding to this, give us your final thoughts. thank you for your work in applying IoT and waiting anxiously for 5G, which will improve what you do. But what exactly is an hindrance or an encumbrance that if government or anybody can take out from the way for you will significantly allow the things you do to leapfrog to the level of success we want to see in the new Africa? As soon as you're done with that, gentlemen, your final thought. What I would like to see in your final thought, gentlemen, would be where do you see 5G impacting the most in the society? What do you look forward to as we go into the next phase of Africa and rolling out the 5G network? But Nahir, please.
Yeah, I mean, to your question, I don't believe anything that the government can or cannot do will really affect the deployment, at least from where we're standing right now. As I said before, the solutions that we're deploying do not require 5G immediately. Of course, 5G will help or will accelerate the number of applications. But yeah, I mean, final thoughts. I think as a society, we need to really look at embracing technology and not just being embracing technology, but actually being evangelists of technology, because there's so many applications, as I said earlier, that if the private sector and the public sector can embrace, we can eventually export these applications. So I would just encourage everyone that's on this call today and my fellow panelists here, that whatever field you're working in, consider the smart version of it. So whether you're looking at agriculture, whether you're looking at buildings, whether you're looking at power, and do your research and engage with the right professionals that are deploying these smart monitoring and these Internet of Things within your sector. I'm very happy to hear about the smart agriculture pilots that you've done. There's so many applications in agriculture as well. So those would be my final words, is to keep an open mind and understand that IoT and smart cities is not something in the future. It's available here today. We just need to look in the right places and work with the right people. So thank you very much. Much appreciated for the organizers of this event and also my fellow panelists. It's been my pleasure and my honor to be with you here today.
All right. For me, my final words is to ensure that, or to assure or reconfirm the fact that the NCC is going to do everything possible to make, provide the enabling environment for operators to deploy whatever technology they feel that deem necessary to deploy. We are not regulating technology, but we are interested in those services that are going to come out of that, and all our regulations and guidelines in dealing with the services are centered around the consumer. Whether it is safety of the consumer, the coming up with quality of service key performance indicators. We're going to develop quality of service key performance indicators to ensure that quality of service being provided on those services at a meet international standard. And somebody has talked about the equipment type approval. This is one of the major activities that we do in the commission, that we ensure that all equipments, either those of 5G or any other technology, are type approved by the commission to ensure that they operate according to the international best standard, and to ensure safety of the consumer. And those who are using it will have the confidence and reliability to use those services. So
So thank you very much, NCC. Thank you. We thank you for the work you do. Nida, final word?
Yes, my final words. I am really looking toward the positioning of Africa to realize or to be part of what Qualcomm has projected of 3.5 trillion worth of investment to be realized in the world by 2030. And the 5G deployment as we speak is projected to be as low as 3% by the GCMA report. This will be in 2025. So the rate at which we are adopting these technologies is it requires a rejig by both the private and the public sector. the approach adopted by governments, especially particular NIDA, the developmental regulation we are putting in place, we believe is going to create a play-level grounds for business-friendly regulations where these emerging technologies can be effectively utilized, and it will bring about effective realization or utilization of them for our envisaged digital economy, for diversification of our country and the diversification of African economy at large. I will be happy looking toward this to happen as fast as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chidi, please.
Okay, my last word. Consumer use case. The current consumer use case is just around faster speeds and greater availability. Make this available at faster speed so people can, get their jobs done. Enterprise case for most, it's essentially this is where the disruption is, where the IoT vendors and application developers, So enterprise use case is essentially around automation, industrial application. Service provider case, essentially faster to market, faster to revenue, faster time to profit. So, and of course, this drives straight into the popular World Bank data about the contribution of broadband to socioeconomic development. So it's a win-win for every side of the segment, from the consumer to the application developers to the enterprises and, of course, to the service provider.
Gentlemen, I must thank you most sincerely for this privilege to spend this time with you on the panel. We've discussed the future of Africa with 5G, and we're focusing on the future of Africa with blockchain and AI. And in this session, we've spoken about 5G technology. I would like to say, for me, in closing, the gentlemen on the panel have made the point. 5G will be a platform. It will bringing all people in Africa, driving a lot of use cases. Regulation will be there to drive the economics and make people deliver these services. People will use it for learning. My kids, in a year or two, will roll out this robotic solution and control things from everywhere in the world. And I'm most excited about this panel and the opportunities it offers for us today and for our kids in the Africa of tomorrow. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Looking forward to seeing you again in future Digital Africa sessions. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye. Thank you.
Yes, guys. Let me run to 0I.